I can't exactly remember about Lester's appendicitis because I wasn't born yet. But I did hear later in years, our parents told us that they called the doctor in the middle of the night, and the doctor says, this was in the middle of the Depression, remember, this was 1931, the depth of the Depression. Lester was born in 28, and the doctor said, you have to pay me before I operate or your son will die. And we had a rich uncle, Lou, who was my grandfather's brother-in-law, and he gave the money, the cash money, to give to the doctor to operate. So Lester is here today.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Les.
Wow.
Okay, my next memory jumps 7 years. I was 10. I began to really get interested in nature, birds and trees and the planets. So Mom would take me to the local library, and we'd look for books. We look at picture books, and sometimes we'd take a book home. On my 10th birthday, I woke up to find a book by my bed. It's this book. It's called Real Things in Nature. It's a concise encyclopedia of the natural world. It's the dedication reads, December 12, 1938, to Lester, who is 10 today. Happy birthday, Mother. What's interesting about it also is that not only the content, but it's signed Mother. Not Mom and Dad, not Mother and Father, Mother. In 1928, money was very, very scarce. Budgets were tight. In order to buy this book, Mom found out that she could get it from Macy's back then. I have no idea how much it cost. I think it put a little bit of a dent in their budget. I don't know if my father was even aware of it, but I've preserved it until this day. It's of course a treasure, and it actually, how supportive Mom was of me in my art, and in my nature loving. Our memories are of parents who loved us, supported us,
Nurtured us.
and it was a kind of a happy childhood, which is,
Years later, we learned that Dad suffered from something called boils under his arms, and he worked for a very, very tough taskmaster in a retail store who worked him 6 days and 4 nights a week. And later, Mom told me that while we were reading Lamb Chops, they were reading peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Who knew such a thing? How could you know it while you're growing up? And we in our bedroom, we shared a bedroom most of our childhood. There was linoleum, and there was a big checkerboard. And I was like 4 or 5 years old, and Mom came in. I was saying, you go 6 boxes this way and 8 boxes that way at 48. And so they instilled in me that I should become an accountant, an actuary, or an auditor. I'll never forget from the time I could conceive of those things. And as I told the story later on at my birthday party, when I went into the Army, my rich friend, his father was a dentist, said he had a friend who was a CPA and a lawyer, and he would guide me. I mean, we had no lawyers or doctors or dentists or architects in our family, so we had to fend for ourselves and carve our own way. So when I got out of the Army and I was ready to start my apprenticeship, I couldn't reach him. You know why I couldn't reach him? He was in the slammer for tax evasion. So that's the help I had. So I remember jumping ahead a little bit when I had to get a job as an accountant. You needed 3 years apprenticeship. And I didn't know how to get a job. I had been in the Army, and then I was a fry cook up in the Pocono Mountains that summer to make some money because I was going to marry Harriet a year later. And Mom told me to go down to Whitehall Street to the New York State Employment Service. How she even knew about it, I don't know. And look up accountants and look up CPAs because I had to work for a CPA to get my apprenticeship. And I got a job at Sig Balaban. And now today, 65, 70 years later, Sig Balaban firm still does my tax returns. I worked for them for a couple of years, and then I stayed with them all these years with all the successor firms who acquired them over the years. And now I got the job, and I had to start work. I didn't have any clothes, so Dad took me to Robert Hall, which was, budget clothes, and bought me 2 suits, except that one was a brown tweed and the other one was a blue, very heavy wool. But it was in August. But those are the only suits I had. So I remember Mom bought me a shirt and a tie and a clip when I was going to get engaged to Harriet. And they always looked out for us. How they knew these things, I'll never know. But thank God that they did. Huh,
Yeah.
Les? Thank God that they did.
Well,
Remember when Dad used to bring stuff home from Mr. Cratter?
sure.
There was a guy, Mr. Cratter, who had the grocery concession in the department store. And he liked my father a lot. He was a great guy. And he used to give him samples. So Lester and I he used to help me make a tent in the house with a broomstick. And we used to eat. The only thing we could open was Russian dressing.
Yeah.
So we ate Russian dressing. Our parents were out. They trusted us to be home alone. Yeah. And we have just great memories. And they're a treasure.
It's not that they were out. It was early in the morning. We'd get up.
Oh, right.
And we'd,
The one day that Dad got to sleep late.
yeah. Are we talking about when we started working? No.
Yeah, sure.
I graduated Abraham Lincoln High School. Well, I'll start. As a freshman, each of us were given a sheet of paper with a list of extracurricular activities. Pick one. A debating club, nature club, photography club. I selected the art squad. To be in the art squad, I learned you had to take a particular art course given by the chairman of the department. I took it. And for 4 years, I was a student at Mr. Friend's graphic design class. He taught, in the 1940s, he taught concept, typography, watercolor, also a very exacting taskmaster. Sometimes he'd say, I'll be in the school at 7:15 a.m. if you want to show me something. If I ever had to do that, Mom would wake me up early, have my lunch packed. Mr. Friend graduated a lot of important people who went on to become art directors, graphic designers. When I was a senior, he introduced me to Alex Steinweiss, one of his former students, who was the art director of Columbia Records. He was now looking for an apprentice. I showed him the work that I had done in Mr. Friend's class, and he hired me. So one day I was a graduate student, and the next day I was an apprentice, and that's how I began my career in the arts in 1940s,
46?
51.
51.
Yeah.
Straight out of high school.
Yeah. Well, actually, out of high school was 47.
Right.
Yeah.
You had the job with the sign painter?
Well, yeah. I mean, during my growing up years, I always worked after school. I worked for a butcher delivering meat, and this was during the war. So on Fridays, I had to collect money from his
Customer, yeah.
customers, as well as the ration stamps, because during the war everything was rationed. I did work for a sign shop, yeah, when I was a little bit older, and yeah, you remember that.
Yeah, I also, the funny thing is that I worked for the chicken lady, delivering chickens. And,
I didn't know that.
oh yeah, and she was a tough lady. She gave me $5 a week in tips. But little did I know, when I went to the rich houses on Bedford Avenue, the maids who took the stuff, they kept the tips.
Oh,
Once in a while. I wanted to work more, but I was only 16 years old when I started college, so I wasn't old enough to drive. You had to be 18 back then, so I worked for them. And then I also worked in an art shop of all things.
I remember.
And I mixed paints amongst other things, and I ran the retail store while the owner gave art lessons to the people in the neighborhood, mostly women. And I remember once I started a little wholesale operation, and I didn't know how to ship the goods, so I called Dad, who was a traffic manager. He told me to use Sealand Express. It's the least expensive way, and they nurtured us no matter what it was. They always were there for us. And jumping ahead a little bit, when I met Harriet, and I told my parents what Lester told them about Bernice, I can drink coffee without sugar now. Her kisses are so sweet.
Well, when I met Bern, that's a very long story. I'll just say that when I came home after our first date, I took Bern to the opera to see La Traviata. I said to Mom and Dad, this is the girl that I'm in love with and the girl that I'm going to marry. When I went to sleep that night, there was a note under my pillow from Mom. It said, if you love her, we'll love her, Mom. And that's how it's been.
I don't know if you ever got any sex education from Dad, but when I met Harriet, first he had told me before that, do a job and do it well, or do a job or not at all, and I never forgot that. Didn't quite rhyme, but it resonated with me. And when I met Harriet, he said, I'm just going to he rehearsed for 2 weeks to tell me this. He says, don't touch a woman before you get married, and once you get married, don't touch any woman but your wife. And then he walked away so shamefacedly.
He told you that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I was wondering if he ever told you, because you came first.
No. No, the day that I was getting married, when we had the tuxedos and the top hats, you're still in boxes. I mean, we hadn't put anything on yet.
1950. April 14th, 1950. April 16th, 1950.
April 16th.
It was.
Dad took me aside and he said, you still want to get married? I said, yeah, Dad. I mean, you know, we just, with that kind of love I had for Bern, who could think about anything but to get married? Sex, that came, but no sex education, because I think Dad said something about just treat her gently, which of course I intended to. And
you hoped she would treat you gently. We were so innocent those days, you know.
and I remember also. No.
Remember Mom coming home from open school night. She would make sure she went, and she remembered that the principal said, the parents we were trying to reach, they're not here tonight. Never forgot that.
Other people. Other people, you mean?
He said, yeah. So they were very concerned with our education, and they always encourage us. Dad, you know, was a proud American, and I came home from Hebrew school on April 12th, 1945. And Franklin Roosevelt had died. I thought it was the end of the world. He worshipped him, just worshipped him. He was so involved in what was going on in the country and the world. Sunday was the only day he used to get to sleep late. And there was a paper shortage during World War II. So he used to give me a dime, which didn't come so easily. I remember going out for the New York Times. Les remembers the Herald Tribune, but I had to get there early in the morning. There was a limited number of papers in the stack. And I went out there, and he was so thrilled. And I remember him throwing me up in bed on a Sunday morning that for 10 cents, I was able to buy the whole Sunday newspaper that he devoured. It was just, for a guy without a formal education, let me tell you, he was a pretty smart guy.
It was one of Dad's dreams to see America. It just wasn't going to be. He got ill, in his older years. But Bert and I took, I think, only John to Washington. Actually, it was our second visit. And we invited Mom and Dad to come with us. And we all stayed at the same hotel. In the morning, we had breakfast, and where's Dad? We searched the city and found Dad at Lincoln Memorial. He was the only one there. He stood there reading Lincoln's words, which were engraved on the wall, with tears rolling down his eyes. It was, as Herb said, he was so proud to be an American, from all the freedoms we enjoyed. And yeah.
So
you have more notes?
So Lester, as he said, was recruited to join this wonderful artist, Alex Steinweiss. At that point, I had 8 older first cousins and my older brother, but I was the first Feldman to go to college. And Brooklyn College was tuition free. All you had to pay for was books and lab fees. And so I pretty much worked full time and went to Brooklyn College full time. And in those days, we gave our mother all the money that we earned. And on our wedding day, she gave it back to us.
Yeah. I mean, I worked for Alex.
I remember the dining room table where she put that money.
Alex paid me $50 a week. I gave my salary to Mom. When Bert and I were married, Mom gave me a bank book. She had deposited some of the money with a check with an amount of $3,000 in it.
Wow.
I had no idea. Yeah. Yes.
So when I got out of college, when I wanted to be a CPA, I was convinced of it by then. And I went to Brooklyn College because it was closest by and I could work full time, as opposed to City College, which was a long subway ride and had a much better program. And then I wanted to take, there were 4 parts to the CPA exam. You could take 2 parts after college and 2 parts after 3 years apprenticeship. Well, I found out that because Brooklyn College charter only allowed you to take 4, maybe 5 courses in your field, you had to take Greek and Roman history, but I could only take 5 courses, and you needed 12 to take the CPA exam. So that's when I decided that I couldn't do it on my own. It was too expensive. So I was in the National Guard. I had become a sergeant in the National Guard, which is not the same as being a sergeant in the regular Army. And I put in for active duty, and I spent 2 years as a sergeant. I first trained basic trainees after I learned myself. Then I was a mess sergeant, a consolidated mess hall that served 1,200 men 3 meals a day. You worked shifts, got up 4 o'clock in the morning. And then finally I taught food service. So when I got out, I had the Korean GI Bill. So when I went to work for Mr. Balaban to start my apprenticeship, I went to NYU graduate school at night, and in 2 years at night I got my MBA, doing well, and then and I took the exam, first two parts, and then I got a Ford Foundation fellowship to Harvard for my PhD, and Harvard accepted me. But I only had 2 years apprenticeship. You needed 3, and Harry and I were married already. So I gave that up, and I went for my PhD at night and completed all the requirements except a dissertation. My dissertation advisor was very poor. He was fired while he was my advisor. Little did I know it. And I wrote a paper on what I did when I was then running. I was Director of Inventory Control and Production Planning for Revlon. And the question is, at different price points, you could buy the components for the product cheaper. So there was one price for $10,000 and a better price for $25,000, even a better price for $75,000. So I did a study, and I found that between the cost of capital, the cost of occupancy, and the cost of supersession, products going out of the line, ran 23% a year. So I developed a formula, which Revlon is still using today, somewhat modified with computers, that, for example, if you're going to buy, you had to buy 2 months, 10,000 units, but if you went to 25,000, the price went down. And so I developed a formula where, in order to go to the next price point, you had to save 2% a month, since it was 24% roughly a year.
Cut it short.
Okay,
I mean,
so
it's like
so that's how I went with Revlon, and then eventually I started my own firm with them.
okay. When I was 18, I was working for Alex, and the Korean War was on, and the draft was on. Truman was president, and he said, "If you want to not be drafted into the army, join an organized reserve." So me and a million other New York kids joined the National Guard. Because I was tall, I was made a corporal. The first time I disobeyed an order, I was cut right back to buck private. But when I was a corporal, I was assigned to a bazooka platoon. This is a handheld rocket launcher. It scared the shit out of me, so I asked for a transfer to the mess platoon. and for 4 years, I enlisted for 3. We were married during that time, and Mark was born. So I was now 4A or something, married with a child. So I got out after the 4th year. But we were in the same outfit.
Lester got me to join the National Guard.
What year was this?
Well, I was from.
I was probably. I remember I was in college, so I must have been like 18.
Yeah, 48 to 51.
Yeah.
You probably joined it around
49.
something like that.
Yeah.
And we'd go out. I mean, when our outfit was out on bivouac during the war games, we were both in the mess platoon. Of course, I got out before Herb did, and when Herb was in the army cooking, he'd come home and he'd say to Mom, "I'll make the sauce for the whatever." And he takes out this huge pot. Mom said, "What are you doing?" Herb said, "Oh, I'm only accustomed to cooking for about 500.
I brought home streusel coffee cake once. She said, "You make that?" I said, "How do you make it?" I said, "You take 2,000 dozen eggs, a ton of flour, 300 pounds of sugar." And there was a joke in the family, but it was great. Just to be with them and to be with Lester and the guidance he gave me, because, 4 years of worldly experience. He went to Dusseldorf with the agency. He went to Africa on a slide safari. He was so knowledgeable. I had never been out of Brooklyn and the Bronx, because we used to go take the subway to my grandfather's family every Friday night. It was like 3 subways. I don't remember coming home because I'm sure I fell asleep coming home, but I did play 500 rummy with my grandpa Reuben and all the family, 8 children and their families. This little apartment, but it was like a ritual. And to this day, I still have cousins I'm in touch with, very, very close. And it was great. To be part of a family is just the most wonderful thing I can imagine.